Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise with a couple of concerns regarding this resolution. First of all, I want to read the resolution just to make sure that it's very clear what it says, and then I will proceed. Be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow the sum of $32,400,000 from the Bank of St. Lucia Limited for the purpose of financing the 2018-2019 budgets in the amount of A, EC $24,300,000 to finance the National Sports Infrastructure Strategy and Action Plan, and B, EC $8,100,000 to finance the 2018-2019 budget. I will not bother to go down to the bottom because my contribution will essentially be focused on Section A or Part A of the resolution. Madam President, the reason I read it again was to ensure that we clearly understand the wording of this resolution. And if the wording of this resolution has to be taken as it was just read, I will have great difficulty in accepting the suggestion that the Leader of Government Business just made, that this loan does not include or does not involve any consultants and so on. And I heard him mention that it has to do with sporting infrastructure. There is a difference between sporting infrastructure, building sporting facilities and so on, and there is also infrastructure that is not necessarily in building. I understand that. There is a difference between that and sporting infrastructure strategy and action plan. The motion is very clear. It is worded in that way, and if it doesn't mean that, then it should be reworded. So, Madam President, before I go any further, I want to make it very clear that maybe earlier on in the sitting, it was suggested that probably we do not read. I am from the education system, and I teach my students that they have to read and read, not only to see words in front of them, but to be able to discern and to be able to make inferences from what they read. And from what I read, I've just read, Madam Speaker, Part A of this resolution, where the majority of the funds is allocated, $24,300,000, is for National Sports Infrastructure Strategy and Action Plan. So, Madam President, what is an action plan? What is a strategy? Am I to suggest or assume that this means the same as buildings? So I will not accept, or I do not feel very comfortable with the explanation that was provided in the briefing by the Leader of Government Business, and so I will ask the following questions. One, but before I even ask the questions, I want to establish a little bit of background. I have been known to be an educator for many years, but I was also a very avid community sports leader. Most of us here know that. So, Mr. Leader of Government Business, Madam President, I understand very much and appreciate the importance of youth development and sports. And I have been involved in working with youth development and sports organizations over 25 years as a president of a community development group and a youth and sports council. I have been involved in these activities long enough to understand the difference between infrastructure and strategy. I have been part of plans and strategy implementation at all levels. So when I come to this house and I read a resolution, I don't think anybody expects me, at least, to think that there is no difference between a plan, a strategy, and actually doing infrastructure. Madam President, I don't think that there is any clear policy from this government regarding the direction in which sports youth development is going. No clear policy. But 2.5 years into government, we are here to borrow money for us to be told or for us to decide what is the strategy and what is the action plan. 2.5 years into government. when you have gone past your halfway point in leadership, in governance, you then decide that you need a strategy and an action plan. You know, Madam President, and then you even come to this house and try to make it sound like it's sporting infrastructure. I am very concerned about this. So, Madam President, I ask, who is going to prepare that development strategy and this action plan? Who? If it is not going to be consultants, then who will do it? I would be happy to know, like the honorable member earlier on made a point about the competence and the capacity of our local human resource when it had to do with SLASPA. I agree, and I've always been a proponent of promoting and developing our human resource. I've said it, that might be the word that has been used with highest frequency in this house by myself when it comes to my presentations. So I totally agree that there is need for us to invest and to make use of our local human resource in terms of giving us information and helping us build capacity. So if there is a sporting infrastructure strategy and an action plan, these are specific things, or an action plan, who is going to put that together? How is that going to be done? And if it is not going to be through consultants, then why is it that I have attended meetings myself? A few weeks ago, I attended a consultation, quote unquote, in my constituency, in my community, because I don't have a constituency. In my community, I was there as a sports leader, and I was being addressed by the Prime Minister himself, along with a few other constituents, on a Friday evening, during a thunderstorm, by a gentleman representing the Packer Company. I was there. I was able to pose questions, and his deliberations, his presentation, had everything to do with what I have read there. All the plans of the government, all the things that they want to do. And this gentleman, as far as I know, is not a St. Lucian. He's not somebody that I know as part of the sports fraternity. And he's the same gentleman he was talking about, Don Lockerbie. So what is it that the leader of government business is trying to say when he quickly tries to preempt what he thought we would mention, that this money is not to be spent on consultants? So why is this gentleman coming to my community to speak to my constituents and myself in the company of the Prime Minister, who promised to go to Parliament to borrow money to do this? Madam President, something is really wrong there. And so, Madam President, I also want to say that when I listened to the presentation made by Mr. Lockerbie, there were certain specific terms that kept being repeated. And I want to just mention a few. You would hear, think about, just imagine, how about, maybe we will. What do you think of? You know, just a lot of fallacy, imagination being appealed to. How about this, and what about this, and just imagine this. You know, I thought I was in some Alice in Wonderland fairy tale something. And this is happening, and let's take a note of what is happening. This resolution is coming to the House today, but before that happened, the Prime Minister has already indicated that he's borrowing money. So you are going to consult with people. Again, it's the same thing that happened when there was the issue with National Cultural Center. Consultation is taking place after action. You want to know what sports leaders and clubs and communities want to do, what they need, what kind of thinking, what are the plans they have for sports developing in your country. Very good. Have the consultation. Go and ask them. I am just saying, Madam President, I attended one about 3 weeks ago, and it came to the House today, but that was in this motion to borrow that money was in the making a long time ago. So, Madam President, there are documents. Of course, there was an attempt to make one a document of the House, but I'm not going there. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that this thing is in motion a long time ago, and now we hear about consultation. What are you coming to ask me and sports leaders when someone is already telling me all the things he wants to do. He's already going around the country telling people what he wants them to imagine, but they haven't said what they want. So let me imagine for myself. Don't tell me what to imagine. Imagine you have this and imagine this in your constituency. I mean, if we want certain things done, the same way this government believes that we have the capacity and we must not underestimate the ability of our people to be able to do things, and the Labour Party government didn't have confidence in the people. Yes, I agree, if that's what you're trying to say. Don't come back here, the very next resolution, and tell me that you are not going to bring consultants, and consultants are on the ground talking to people and being paid. Madam President, I have great difficulty. And I also want to ask, all these, I call them dreams and fantasies, that are being proposed to us, who is going to pay for them? Who's going to pay for them? And when people are doing consultancies, they are paid. And so when I come to the House to be part of a debate where money is being borrowed, I want to ask if there is a sports development strategy and action plan. Who is doing it? Who is doing it? And who is paying the person or the persons who are doing it? Is it being done by our local sporting consultants? Do we have people in the various ministry departments? And we have a former permanent secretary in Ministry of Youth and Sports. She knows the technocrats involved in that. Who is doing it? So I think we need to make that point a little bit clearer and clarify. Madam President, as I mentioned, we do have people in St. Lucia who have been proven competent persons who can handle all technical aspects of sporting infrastructure. We also have people who can deal with designs, project design, project management, architecture, construction, almost every area in St. Lucia. And why is it that we cannot find, somebody asked me to name one, I would Madam President, who designed the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground? It was a local architect, at least two of them. And I was asked to name one. I may want to do that. Mr. Skeet, Mr. Hennicat, don't these people sound like local St. Lucians who have pedigree in designing local infrastructure that stands very proudly now, and all of us go and clap and enjoy one of the best facilities in the region for cricket? Who designed them? So we do have the capacity, and I agree. The same for SLASPA. We do have capacity for SLASPA to take care of its business. We also have capacity for sports to take care of its business, because there are St. Lucians who can do it. So, Madam President, I also want to say, what is this government's obsession, maybe let me use a lighter term, preoccupation with, yes, before I even say it, my colleagues seem to know, with foreign-based services. I want to put it this way. Foreign-based services. Huh? The same government that is beating up on the Labour Party and beating up on the former Prime Minister for wanting to have a PPP for an airport, where we were not spending a cent to do anything and taking the risk. We feel that SLASPA can deal with it. We have capacity. When it comes to sports infrastructure, there is no mention or no room for that same type of local capacity and local technical ability. Hypocrisy, Madam President. It is hypocrisy. And so if your position is that we will only seek foreign intervention if we do not have the local capacity, very well. I agree, because we want the best quality. We don't want to say we're doing things local just to appease our local, people, and then we have substandard results. So if we do not have the local capacity, very well, let us seek it from outside. But do not be conveniently supporting the idea of promoting our St. Lucians and what we can do locally, our local resource and our capacity to do things for ourselves. And when it comes to a simple thing, like designing an action plan and an infrastructure strategy, I think I can do some sections of that, Madam President. I believe I can.
I think you can.
As a former FIFA administration person, these are things that we can do.
I think you can.
It's not my area of expertise, so I'll not boast about it, but I'm sure I can achieve some of that as a layman. What is it about this that we must involve people who are fantasizing and telling us to imagine things, right? With all kinds of accents. Some of the people at the consultation, I'm sure they couldn't even understand what was being said. And then we come to the House and say that we are proud of our ability to have SLASPA manage our business. We must stop the hypocrisy, Madam President. It is, and yes, and I believe our former PS and my very good friend, Minister in the Ministry of Culture, herself, can even lead that process. I wouldn't mind if she led the process. But we do not think that it's consistent for this government to, out of one corner of their mouth, promote local capacity and local ability and technocrats, and then from the other corner of their mouth, you know, consultants. And the leader of government business, you know, dared to come to the House to try to preempt this by saying that there will be no consultants. So all I'm saying is, if there will be no foreign consultants, if there will be no Lockerbie and no Packer Company, who is going to develop this sports strategy, and who is going to see about this action plan that is written in this resolution? Madam President, finally, because I don't intend to be long on this, I just wanted to make those points.
Take your time, take your time.
Why wasn't this, before I say so, the second part of the resolution speaks to financing the budget. And as I said, I don't really have an issue with that. I think that is in order. And the leader of government business is correct to say that this is just routine. But my question is, why isn't the section to deal with sporting the strategy and action plan, why wasn't that in our sports budget? Because that section was not in the sports budget for this year. Why wasn't it there? So at what point did the government find it necessary to include or to embark on this strategy and sports action plan that is in this resolution? Why? I'm not saying that a country doesn't need a sports strategy and action plan, of course. I would believe that you need that before you get into office. You should be campaigning on that, and when you get into office, you begin with that. And everything you do afterwards will be informed by your plan. Now, the action plan is all the activities that are going to be taking place during the course. But you must have a plan, you must have a vision to come with. Halfway into your term, you're now beginning to have people imagine this. And where was the plan before? Where was your plan before?
Consultants.
I'm not here to promote any government's or party's manifesto. I'm asking, where was the plan before? And why, if that was in your plan, I remember in the first year when the government came into office, they said the budget was not ours. It was not prepared by our government. It was passed, okay. But in the second fiscal year, they prepared a budget. And Ernst & Young, was it? You tell me. Was paid a substantive amount to prepare it. So if all that money was spent and all that effort was made to have the government prepare its own budget, why wasn't this strategy, action plan, whatever they call it in this resolution, why wasn't it included as one of the main components under youth and sports development, which has its own department, during the time that this budget was prepared? Madam President, this component is not featured in the budget. And my question is, why isn't it there? And if it is not there, why are we going to borrow almost 4/5 of the monies that are going to be borrowed from this amount here for that purpose? Only 8,100,000 is being borrowed to finance what is in the budget. In other words, what you had planned to do. Or what you had articulated in your budget debate. But 24.3 million is now being allocated, and you're trying to tell me that it's not to pay consultants. Well, I'd like to know to pay whom and for what. Okay? So, Madam President, this is essentially my issue, and I'm hopeful that there will be some clarification and some explanation, at least, provided clearly and correctly on that matter by the government before we vote on this matter. Because I would have loved to support a motion like this, having a strong background and concern for sports and youth development. I would love to come into this honorable house to support any motion to advance the cause of youth and sports development. But don't come to the house and pretend that you're borrowing money to do that when the largest, a significant chunk of it, or almost all of it, is going into the hands of somebody who's coming to tell me what I already know in the name of consultation, coming to tell me to imagine things and to think about things that I have already imagined and thought about since I was a child. And all I want to see is for it to happen. So, Madam President, I think we should stop playing games with the people, stop having people to come out in rain in their communities to come and sit and listen to people fantasize, and rather we should be able to take those resources and put them into real action that will bring about real youth and sports development for the young people of our country. I thank you, Madam President.